So sometimes I question whether or not I know what the hell I'm doing. It's one of the hottest days of the year, and here I am in the kitchen surrounded by lights, trying to make carne asada. Now, the smart thing to do is, as our temperatures hit about 100 degrees today, is I'm gonna take this shit outside and I'm gonna grill the hell out of it. And it just happens to be that's the best way to make carne asada. Do it over mesquite, do it over some real charcoal, lump hardwood, not that Kingsford briquette sawdust and cornstarch crap. Now granted, if that's all you got, cool, work with what you got. And if you got to do it inside in the stove, hey, that's fine. Just make sure you get it nice and crispy and caramelized. I'm doing it outside, but I think for this, I'm gonna need some tortillas, I'm gonna need some pico de gallo, maybe a couple of salsas. Let's make this carne asada. I'm gonna be throwing a little tiny little touch of food science at you too. This right here is what I'm gonna use to make sure that all this beautiful chuck that I have is going to be as tender as possible. This right here is prime. The reason it's considered prime is, I just freshly cut this too. If you take a look here, you see all that fat within the muscle? The different grades of meat. You have prime, choice, and then you have a couple grades that never actually make it to the supermarket. Generally, you get choice. Choice is fine meat. Choice is flavorful. It's less expensive. It's definitely good stuff. Then you get this. This is prime. Most of this ends up going to the restaurants. So when you go to a restaurant and you have a fantastic steak, you try to come home and you do it and you're like, doesn't taste as good. This is why. These are a grade of meat that's not going to make it to your house, generally. Surprisingly, I got this at Costco. I've got a large, let's say 2 kilo of chuck steak. Now, generally when people make carne asada, they're going to say, you know, I'm going to make beautiful flank steak or a hanger steak. Apparently there's even people that do it with ribeye. Look at this. That is a piece of meat you can marinate, get a little of this tenderizer into, and cook on the grill. It's going to get beautiful caramelization. It's going to get some great char on it. That fat's going to render down and get flavor. You chop it up, put it in a tortilla, and you're set. So let's get this going. But here's our ingredients. 1.91 kilos of meat. I've cut this also fairly thin by hand. What you can do, it's a little easier if you're at the store. See if the butchers can throw it on the slicer for you and slice it thin. Otherwise, throw it in your freezer, probably about an hour. Take it out and just cut it carefully. So 20 grams of salt, close to about 1.2% of this weight is the amount of salt that you have here. We have 5 grams each, onion powder, garlic powder, and caldo de tomate, which is no different from those bouillon powders that you have, except this one is tomato and cilantro, whereas many of the others are either chicken or beef. In here, I have several different types of spices. We have 3 grams of coriander, 6 grams of achiote, and 10 grams of cumin. Now, the coriander, the cumin, they're gonna give a great earthy, woodsy flavor to the meat. The achiote is gonna give a little bit of color and a little bit of sourness. Then to continue with the sourness, I have naranja agria, which is sour orange, used a lot in Mexican food, and it's also known as the kiwi. This kiwi, I'm gonna cut in half, right? And I'm probably gonna use most of it, not all of it. Definitely take the skin off. So here we go. Right, we're gonna load that right into the blender. These spices, they need to get toasted, so let's get that done. When you're toasting your spices, do it in a hot pan and do it just until they start to smoke. All right, we got our spices toasted and cooled a little bit. Those are gonna go right here into the blender, along with the onion and garlic powder, our salt, and then give this a good shake. And we're going to get our sour orange juice right in there. That should be a good place to start. We can always add more later. What we don't want is for this to be too dilute, too thin. And now we blend it up. When blending up the marinade, you're not going for a perfectly smooth sauce. It's not going to go through a sieve. A little chunky is fine. Just let it blend for a bit. Alright, that looks good. Now, I'm going to throw this meat into a Cambro, get some of the sauce layered into it, and let it rest for about 4 hours. You should have a pretty good level of salt. You can always try it later when your meat's coming off the grill. It's always a good time to just kind of see what it looks like, see what it tastes like. And as you're chopping it, mix in a little bit of salt if it needs it. Now, it's going to marinate for about 4 hours, but during that 4-hour period, it's a good idea to just toss it every once in a while. That's going to get more of this marinade on everybody. I'll tell you now that it's highly unlikely that you're going to need to add salt to this. And I want just a little bit more liquid on everything. So I'm going to get that orange juice into there. There we go. Kind of massage it in, make sure everybody gets a little bit of flavor on them. Make sure we don't have any voids. Now I will say about this naranja agria, it's sour orange. It's a fairly unique flavor. You're not going to be able to just replicate it if you can't find it. That said, it's totally okay to replace it with, I'd say, about half a cup of lime juice, half a cup of grapefruit juice. That's generally what I use when I can't find the naranja agria. However, there's some flavors in this that you're not going to get in those juices that makes it different. Now this is going to spend the next 4 hours in the fridge. That's going to give the enzymes here in the kiwi enough time to work, loosen this up, get that meat a little more tenderized. You can do it overnight. I've been reading up on the enzymes in kiwi, and there's been people that have gone as far as a week without the meat turning into mush like it does with papaya. So feel free to experiment with it. Honestly though, I would do day of or the next day. I wouldn't go too much further than that. I'm going to make some quick flour tortillas. Super simple. A couple little key ingredients in here. So first we're going to go 400 grams of flour. This is just regular all-purpose flour. 6 grams of salt and 8 grams of baking powder. We'll go ahead and mix that around a little bit. Now we want to add 80 grams of asiento. After you add in the asiento, pour in 240 mils of water and just let that thing mix for a bit. And if you're a little messy like I am, it's no big deal, it's water. After mixing your dough, let the dough rest for a couple hours, press it out onto a press, and onto a medium hot iron skillet. I used the coals a little bit early here as we were racing a storm, but It was nice, it was hot, it rendered down the fat perfectly, got great caramelization on the meat, and overall made a perfect batch of carne asada, and had enough leftover heat for some grilled onions, grilled corn, and some grilled jalapenos. This is why we make sure that we cut the meat in a way to shorten the muscle fibers. You're going to chop up this meat into nice little bite-sized pieces, and as long as you cut it right, you're going to get beautifully tender meat. First, from the enzymes from the kiwi. Second, because you broke down those muscle fibers and cut them short. All in all, it's going to be a beautiful bite. You want to chop up your meat as soon as it's off the grill. The hotter the meat, the better. Get it into small dice, and then into some tortillas, and then into your mouth. I had some jalapenos here that I julienned up because they make great addition to your tacos. The tacos, some corn, some grilled green onions, and that's a great meal right there. Now, something I didn't show is I made some salsa. It was 2.5 jalapenos, 1 whole tomato, half a bunch of cilantro, and 1/4 of an onion. Right into the blender, blend it up, add a little bit of about 2 ounces of the naranja agria, and salt. Now it's time to make some badass tacos. Take some flour tortillas, overfill it with that meat, get some onion, some cilantro, some tomatoes on top, some of those grilled jalapenos, that beautiful salsa. Dress the plate with a little bit of corn and grilled green onions, and you got an amazing meal. The meat was nice and tender from the actinidin that's in the kiwi. The meat perfectly salted at that 1% level. The garlic was bright, the sour orange brought a lot of flavor to it, citrus and sour without being overwhelmingly so. And then the meat, you gotta get this. Go out, get some great beef, and make yourself some awesome tacos.